Welcome to the April 21st, 2021 edition of the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series, brought to you by the National Urban League. I'm your host, Kenneth L. Johnson, president of the Harlem, New York-based diversity recruitment firm, East Coast Executives. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. The Digital Career Success Series, DCSS, is a professional development series that helps members of our Urban League Young Professional chapters and other diverse job seekers develop new skill sets that will enhance their careers through digital platforms such as webinars and Facebook Live. The goal is to provide an opportunity for professional development right from one's computer. Today's Digital Career Success Series, Bridging the Gap, will feature our sponsors, Robert Half and Protiviti. Robert Half International, or commonly referred to as Robert Half, is a global human resource consulting firm based in Menlo Park, California, founded in 1948. It is credited as being the world's first and largest accounting and finance staffing firm with over 345 locations worldwide. Protiviti is a global consulting firm that develops deep expertise, objective insights, a tailored approach, and unparalleled collaboration. At this time, I would like to pass it over to Mr. Jason King. Jason, thanks for joining us today. It's all you.
Hey, thank you so much, Kenneth. It's great to be here. Hope everyone is doing really well out there. So this might be a little bit different from some of the other National Urban League events that you have attended in the past. We really want to keep this very conversational, very interactive, but most importantly, very authentic. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about why we're here, if we can move to the next slide. So really surrounding this concept of a beginner's mindset. The definition is right there on the screen for you, but there's really three words that I just want everyone to really wrap their arms around, which is really the open-mindedness piece of it, the eagerness and lack of preconceptions. And I think it's extremely important to remember, it doesn't matter what part of your career you're in, whether you're just getting started in your career, whether you're at the midpoint of your career, the latter part of your career, anywhere in between, it's extremely important to make sure that we're wrapping our arms around this concept of having an open mindset, or a beginner's mindset, as I should say, or you could potentially be left behind as the employment landscape moves forward. So it's my honor today to actually introduce two of our panelists that we have from our organization that are going to be sharing a little bit about their experiences and give you some insights throughout the Q&A. So first, I'm going to introduce Billy Mollier. She's a district president for Robert Half. She is based out of our New York office, and I don't want to mess this up, but she is the Enterprise Diversity and Inclusion Lead for our organization. So Billy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely.
Happy to be here.
Hey, thank you. And then our second panelist is Maya Reed. She is a senior consultant with our Protiviti practice. She's been with our organization for close to about 3 years, and she is the lead of Protiviti's New York office multicultural employee network group. So Maya, thank you so much for being here today.
Yep, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we transition into our Q&A, I just want to tell everyone that there's really three sections to the questions that we're going to be walking through. First is really surrounding that beginner's mindset concept that I just talked about. The second is surrounding new skills. And then the third set of questions is really going to be surrounded, what the workplace of the future is going to look like. So with that being said, we'll get started in. So Billy, Maya, first question's off to you. And then Billy, if you wanted to kick us off. So what is a beginner's mindset to you, and why is that so important in today's environment?
Yeah, and as we've been talking about this, Jason, it actually kind of elevates this whole concept of a beginner's mindset more and more for me daily as I think about it. I just want to start with, I think this concept's amazing. And I want to start with a quote from the creator of the concept. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. So I know we all like to regard ourselves as experts in some respect.
Right.
I think in a lot of respects, you're able to better learn by starting from a beginner's mindset. So in my mind, I think of a beginner's mindset, at least for adults, to be akin to that of like a toddler, right?
Right.
You want openness. You want to feel like you've got some creativity brewing there. You're eager to learn, but you want to do it from kind of an empty place. And a toddler's not an infant, so it's impossible to be completely empty. And I think if we all challenge ourselves there, it's really tough. But if you can kind of dispel with preconceptions and go from as empty and open space as possible, this kind of mindset puts you in a position to be a better learner. And I think, and I know we will get to this, it also helps with diversity, tolerance, and inclusion,
Right.
right? Because if we start conversations in the way we approach work and how we hire from a beginner's mindset, it's a win-win. And I will just say, I had to start this meeting from a beginner's mindset, like making sure I had the technology together.
Right.
So I had to
Right.
forget everything I thought I knew and start anew, getting coached from you guys on how to learn how to lodge this meeting. But that's really what it means to me, and I think it's an amazing concept. And I hope as we leave today, everyone can think about ways they can revert to that to improve, what they do on a daily basis.
Perfect. And then Maya, how about you?
Yeah, so I think having a beginner's mindset is really just being open to different approaches and to accepting tasks regardless of your prior experiences or what your prior thoughts may have been on that task. Having a beginner's mindset also entails just leveraging your former skills, but also being open to forming new skills and conforming. I feel like our world is constantly changing and there's always a demand for some sort of new skill. So it's really crucial to just maintain that beginner's mindset with whatever you're pursuing.
Right. And then Maya, I'm going to stay with you because you're a little bit newer in your career. So how have you adopted more of that entrepreneurial or startup mindset in your career to get it kicked off?
Yeah, so I feel that since I started my career, I've always really been interested in building up new skills. And I think that's where I've maintained that beginner's mindset the most. But also in just joining a new project, meeting someone new, meeting someone who may be from somewhere I'm not familiar with, or things like
Right.
that. I think having a beginner's mindset really just entails being open, inclusive, and innovative. Um, and then further touching on me just being new to working, I felt that it was important to just continuously grow my skill set. So I've definitely continued that beginner's mindset in building up skills and certifications, things like that.
Right. Perfect. And then, so Billy, I want to ask you this question just because you oversee a very large territory, a very large team. So I know we originally talked about what that means for personally, but how, as a leader, how do you integrate or develop that beginner's mindset within your team culture?
Right. Good question. And as we mentioned, I think this mindset is critical for everyone, no matter how little or extensive your experience is. And so Maya and I have a few years difference between us. Not that many, Maya. Not that many. Okay. Not dating myself here. But I think, in a lot of ways when you do, I've been with the organization, it'll be 15 years in June. I practiced law for 10 years before that. So a lot of times when you have kind of built a lot of experience, it's hard to not lean on that as the way things should be. And I
Right.
think if you want what I think Maya represents, innovativeness, creativity, the eagerness to learn, adaptability, flexibility, which is what most hiring managers are looking for, then you've got to be able to, number one, what I would say is set an example by leading by example yourself. And so for me, showing that I can have a beginner's mindset, I think is pretty critical for my teams. And some of that I think we do by, I try to pull my teams together and ask simple questions when I've got, good diversity in terms of experience on my team, but I may have experienced people and really new people, but ask
Right.
simple questions that challenge the status quo. Even if the 20-year employee who knows everything, right, is setting the stage, maybe we bring in the new person and says, what would you add to that? Either consistent with or different. We'd be interested. So promoting that. The other thing I would do is try to use testimonials on how, coming to something open with ideas or not from a preconceived notions uh, has helped us to be successful, and this is how. So
Right.
showing that testimonial success. the last thing I would say is creating collaboration opportunities between experienced and newer professionals in the workplace so they can learn from one another. In some cases, expertise is great.
Right.
But as Maya mentioned, you want to marry that with your ability to be open, innovative, creative, and flexible so that you can come to the best problem solving solution or be the best contributor in the organization. And so those are some of the things I try to do from a leadership perspective.
Okay, perfect. I really appreciate that. And Maya, I just wanted to ask you this one off the cuff, just because not being particularly in a leadership position, how can you contribute, from a culture standpoint as an individual producer, or an individual producer in that standpoint, to that beginner's mindset in your culture on your team?
Yeah. So I would say just taking that extra step and trying to foster some of those ideals that Billy just touched on, being open, inclusive, innovative. So even if you're not directly leading the team, still demonstrating those values and perhaps maybe mentoring someone else that's newer on the team and kind of getting them to also demonstrate that beginner's mindset, I think are ways that you can contribute.
Right.
You
And
know,
thank
Jason,
you.
if I
Oh,
could just
yeah,
add
go, go,
one
go.
other thing,
Yeah,
by
please
way
do.
of example, I did want to share. I had an example actually today of, someone who's 20-year employee with Robert Half, regarded as a leader on our team. We had a call this morning, and we wanted to make sure. Again, I'll talk about this technology. I think technology is transforming the way we all do business, and some
Absolutely.
dinosaurs like me probably have a lot more challenges in that regard. But, thinking about this beginner's mindset, what we did was this person has been challenged with technology. Hope they're not on the call. But we did kind of a train the trainer. We all agree this is something we need. We know it's hard when you're coming from a 19, 20 years of experience where this doesn't work and you just don't feel like it's something you need to add to your toolkit of resources, but we need to do it. And so with this person, we said, we're going to train you to train everybody else on this call we had this morning. It was a little choppy, but it was amazing. And this 20-year employee walked away with, wow, I'm going to use these resources. And by the way, she showed her calendar. She had training for a number of other resources. But at the end of the day, also, it helps you to pad your own resume and experience and position you for different roles in your organization or elsewhere. So I just wanted to add that as an example.
Oh, that is a great example, and it's a great point, because I think we've all experienced, life kind of getting flipped on its head last year. And not only in those opportunities, obviously you go through some challenges, but it creates a tremendous amount of opportunities as well. So I think it's always extremely important to keep that mindset, not just on a monthly or a quarterly basis, but this is something that we just have to come every single day and just remind ourselves that we have to position ourselves in that beginner's mindset. So thank you both for sharing that. So with that being said, we're going to transition to more of the skills portion of the question. So Maya, if you want to kick us off. So how can someone virtually or digitally brand themselves in today's marketplace?
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of ways. One way to digitally brand yourself that I think is extra effective recently has just been keeping your LinkedIn up to date, or if you don't have a LinkedIn, starting by making a LinkedIn and connecting with whoever you know that you've engaged with professionally, or maybe might be a peer or family member, just initiating that network. And then once you have a network built, continuously following up with people within your network, letting them know what you're doing, and also reaching out to them to see how they are, things like that. I think other ways to virtually brand yourself can be setting up virtual coffee chats, whether it's with someone within your network or someone that you're hoping to meet. I feel like a lot of people actually appreciate those virtual coffee chats while we're in this pandemic. Virtual networking chats are also good. I know sometimes those come up on LinkedIn as potential events. And then I think lastly, just having questions ready when you engage in one of these virtual networking events is always crucial.
Absolutely. And then
And
outside, oh, go ahead, Billy.
Jason, if I just, I think some of those are great. If I could just add a few more, Maya, to what you mentioned. I mean, I think the whole concept of personal branding is is really important today as we continue to see more remote opportunity. And, you know, we never know what the future holds, right? We're not all in offices. We're not all going to personal networking events. I would just add to Maya's point, I would think about your entire online presence though, not just the professional networking opportunities to find you, because you know some stats that I've read suggest that 80% of hiring managers will Google you.
Mhm.
I know I do.
I do too. I
so,
do too.
So, you know, yeah, look, Google yourself, look at what comes up, because you want to control the way you're viewed online. Sometimes you may be a perfect fit for a job and a hiring manager decides to Google you and something unflattering shows up. And so I would just say take charge of your own virtual message by doing that. The other thing I would just add is imitation. I think is the perfect form of flattery. I look at someone else's professional online profile and maybe I've done that myself, mimic it, right, to make it your own. Uh, Boosting your expertise and authority, also like selling yourself, right, in terms of your online presence. Because again, you may be job searching or looking for another opportunity, but trust me, if you have enough going out there, people will find you as well, particularly with the market and demand right now for certain skill sets. Couple of other things, curate content and participate in discussions around what you purport to do as a professional. I think the more that you're out there speaking to certain subjects or showing that you understand the profession you're in, the more relevant you are. The last thing I would just mention is just make sure your photo represents what you want it to represent.
Right.
Because a lot of times that's, you know, I've even seen resumes lately, and Jason, I know you probably have in the creative world, where the photo's on the resume. But your brand itself, including resume and digital footprint, really sell what you are all about. And so I think it's really, really important these days to make sure we have it right. So those are just a few other things I would add.
No, and that's a fantastic point. And coming from a leadership role myself as well, and I'm glad that you brought that up about the entire digital footprint of your brand, because a lot of the times people think, oh, as long as I keep my LinkedIn profile professional, I can do what I want with my Twitter or my Facebook or those types of social media accounts. But most people will Google individuals and look at those other social media accounts to really get a true picture of that individual's digital footprint. Because a lot of the times, obviously, we're representing organizations and we're representing that organization when we are working for them. And the way you brand yourself is going to be branded to their external customers as well. So that's a great point for bringing that up. So outside of the technical skills, what are some skills that are attractive to employers today outside of those technical components?
You keeping it with me?
Yeah, let's stick with you and then we'll jump over to Maya. Whoever wants to jump in. Yeah, of course.
Okay. Or I can go, but Maya, did you want to start?
No, you go. Okay, I'll go next.
I think today, because, you know, the job market is, and maybe we'll get to this a little later, but it's really interesting. You know, we went through a pandemic and unemployment is still higher than it was pre-pandemic, but
Right.
in certain sectors, unemployment's really low. So I'm in the legal vertical with Robert Half, and unemployment in our specialized spaces is under 1%. It's like 0.9% for lawyers, overall 1.5%. And so I think a lot of our hiring managers understand that, yes, well, another thing I add, because of the remote nature of work, some of the markets become diluted because specialized candidates can work anywhere for the most part. And so hiring managers are trying to decide, how do I get the talent I need, or how do I get the right soft skills so that I can train them into roles. And so there was another stat about how new college grads might have a lot more opportunity if they can showcase or play up, which is what I was going to mention, your soft skills. So whether it's your ability to be customer service facing or client facing, so you can impact your organization's business, problem solving ability, flexibility, and adaptability, goes back to the beginner's mindset. Any leadership ability, not necessarily I can supervise people, but I can lead tasks, I can lead, you know, I can potentially lead a team related to a certain project. I've mentored or I'm open to mentoring. I think the other things in terms of soft skills are self-motivation. Maya spoke to some of that, your ability to kind of be driven, motivated, show that you're creative and innovative. And then another thing I think that's more and more becoming important is your activeness. So I mentioned curating content, doing things on social media. That also extends to like external community involvement.
Right.
More organizations want to speak to what's happening right now in society. They also want people to see that people are connected to that and are willing to contribute. So, I would just highlight that as those are skills we might not necessarily think about, but are
Right.
becoming more and more relevant for job seekers today.
Very true. Maya, anything that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, and I love what Billy said. I think also having some critical thinking and analysis skills, that's generally a soft skill that can be learned, I'd say. And I feel like just reading and things like that definitely helps with those kinds of skills. Also, public speaking and presentation skills, I feel, are always important no matter what job you're at. Being able to present what you've worked on and really articulate whatever you're doing is always valuable. So, yeah, I'd
All right.
consider those.
Okay, perfect. I appreciate that. So, and I think some of the things that you both had mentioned, you've already answered for this next question I'm going to ask. But if there's anything else, so what are some tips for individuals that are really looking for jobs? Like, what are tips for people trying to find work right now in that remote or virtual space?
And I'm sorry, I may have a little background noise. My apologies for everyone. I think a couple of other things that maybe we haven't added is, we talked about polishing up your professional
Right.
kind of brand and, virtual footprint. But the networking piece, I know Maya spoke to that a little bit, but I always say if you are looking for another role, be your best advocate for it. So drive that and start by driving it through networking, communicating with everyone good people know good people, and frankly, just don't be afraid to say I'm looking for something else, whether it's, you can say if it's confidential and you have a relationship. But ask for referrals as well. Make sure you have your references polished up, because sometimes you may just be, to Maya's point, in a virtual coffee or chat, and some wheels start turning about something that might be available, that might be something that you might be a fit for. And so why not have a reference available to just speak to your abilities also?
Right.
The other thing I would just say, polish up interview skills. Like I think about myself, honestly, had I not been thinking about this, not that I'm interviewing anytime soon, but but if I were interviewing before I started thinking about this, and because we're in the job placement market, I see it all the time, I probably wouldn't have been ready for the transition that's occurred based on the health pandemic that we are in and went through. Like, I think you really have to be prepared for virtual interviewing. A lot of hiring managers are recruiting virtually, hiring virtually, and you start virtually.
Okay.
And so what does your interview look like? Wait, when you join on camera on an interview, are your eyes just showing? Is your mouth showing? Like, did you practice that? What does your backdrop look like? And this again goes to the beginner's mind, right? Can you use technology? But, I was really impressed by interviews where someone had our logo on their backdrop or their motto, like action focused, driven professional. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So these are all ways to sell yourself. And I would just make sure I always have a backup, for instance, if something happened today, hopefully we have a backup, right, with technology, but you got to make sure that you do that in today's virtual and digital world. So that's what I would add.
Perfect. Anything else you wanted to add to that, Maya?
I think Billy covered most of it. Definitely, if you're really actively looking right now, I think LinkedIn is very beneficial in just cultivating your network and being aware of what other people might be doing. So yeah, basically agree with what Billy said.
Perfect. And just a couple of things, and I think you both would have mentioned them, but I just really want to make sure that folks out there hear this, is just no matter whether you are looking for work or you are currently employed, presentation skills and how you conduct yourself is going to be in public speaking is huge, because you have to think now, a lot of people in their current roles obviously have been shifted and are having to do more with less. But I also think sitting in front of a camera, to Billy's point and to Maya's point, is not going away anytime soon. And Robert Half released a survey, I want to say it was like last week, where it was saying that 1 in 3 individuals, if they were asked to return back to the office full time, would potentially look for other work, which means that puts the emphasis on the employers to still keep potentially a hybrid model going. So the way that we are working today on video camera and this hybrid model is not going anywhere. So the way that we present are different. I mean, I can't show my body language the way I used to show my body language standing in front of an audience of folks. So practicing, making sure that technology working is going to be huge moving forward. So thank you both for talking and sharing through that skills section. So the next section, well, I should say the last section that we're going to walk through from a Q&A standpoint is going to be the workplace of the future. So I'm going to have Billy start off and just say, what is the workplace and what's the job market look like now for the workplace of the future, Billy?
Yeah, I think I shared a little bit of that. I think it's good news for job seekers, even though, overall unemployment, albeit coming down pretty significantly, is, still not as low as it was pre-pandemic, but in some of the specialized spaces, particularly the ones that we focus on, there's pretty low unemployment, and we're seeing a lot of demand for talent. And so in the other piece, we talked about virtual opportunities. I think that's the new normal, to be frank with you, for a number of roles. The other thing I would just mention is that you want to make sure, though, that you are an advocate for yourself, your job search. And I would just say, in today's job market, crafting your resume specific to what you're looking for, and making sure, and I keep mentioning this, you're selling yourself in a way that showcases you can pivot as fast as business needs are pivoting. And so you might be an IT professional who has some other skill set. And so you've got to figure out how you brand yourself, so it's not appearing that you are expert at everything, because it's kind of impossible. Well, maybe not. I mean, I just don't know a lot of experts at everything, but you're selling yourself in a way that's going to position you for, kind of the rapidly evolving demands in the market. But I think the market today, there's pretty good news for job seekers or people looking to move careers.
Absolutely. And then Maya, is there anything that you wanted to add to that question?
No, I think that one Billy covered.
Okay, perfect. And then there has been obviously an increased attention and focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And so, Billy, I'm looking over here so I can make sure I ask this question properly. So what do you see as the impact of these changes on the employee experience?
Yeah, big one. I think, I frankly think, even though the last year has been tough, whether it's from the health crisis and some of the social issues we've had to, be confronted with, I think it's brought a lot of discussion to the forefront that obviously, probably should have happened a long time ago, but thank goodness we're having those discussions. I'll just plug again, I think these discussions is especially important to have a beginner's mindset. When you're walking into differences, how to be inclusive and how to understand people's perspectives. I think from a company's perspectives, a lot of employers are, but I think they must recognize that times today are kind of challenging. We're flanked with social injustice issues, compounded with a battle, related to the health crisis. And so that creates anxiety, fear, sometimes anger. And, let's be honest. I mean, yet again, this week, we were dealing with the circumstances in Minneapolis. And, if you turn on the news, there's a potentially another incident. I don't have all the details in Ohio today. So, I think organizations have to play, the role they want, but a significant role in this space. And I think it's incumbent upon people who work there to decide if those values align with theirs. I'm just going to speak. I like to share a quote that came from our C-suite yesterday. It was very timely. And it was our CEOs of, our talent solutions and Protiviti, along with our global CEO, and they said, Without diversity, we limit our ability to benefit from different ideas, viewpoints, skills, and talents. Our leadership team is deeply committed to a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplace. It is a top priority, and it will always be a critical factor for us. And I think timing is important, and the position the organization takes as well. So I just throw that out there. Last thing I would just say without talking too much, you guys, but obviously this is important, right?
Yeah, it's
Um,
extremely important.
the words that come to mind for me when you think about from a corporate standpoint, what's top of mind for job seekers, employers, but even probably should be for an organization in the diversity, inclusion, and equity space: empathy, understanding, listening and learning, allyship, voice for the underrepresented. A lot of organizations are talking about their diversity numbers, and so voice for the underrepresented. Commitment to equity, inclusion, and recruitment, and diversity and recruitment, hiring, retention, leadership, and upward opportunity. Commitment to racial justice, learning journeys, whether that's creation of communities of inclusions, conversations, and out for dialogue to those underrepresented populations, implicit bias and other D&I trainings, with accountability through leadership, supplier diversity, and just always considering, last but not least, the tone from top level leadership in the organization, and then action with urgency. So, those are my 2 or 10 cents on the subject, but I think all of that is front and center today. And in a lot of ways it's great, but those are, some ways that all of our workplaces are being impacted today.
Awesome. Couldn't have said it better myself. So so I'm going to transition this next question over to Maya. So Maya, what's working for you to stay connected in today's anywhere workplace? But I think not just what's working, but what hasn't potentially worked for you in today's workplace.
Yeah, so a lot of things that have worked in today's workplace are proactively scheduling meetings with leadership. So that includes people I report to directly to just understand how I'm doing and areas of opportunity. Some of these things might be easier done in person, so it's important to still schedule these kinds of meetings virtually. And then also checking in on people, not even from a work perspective, but maybe just checking in and seeing how people are doing outside of work, just to stay connected and really get more of those genuine conversations. And then with the people that I mentor, I set up check-ins to just see how they're doing, see if there's anything they might need from me. And then maintaining an active presence on LinkedIn just to check in with other people and just show what I've been up to. So I'd say those are some things that have been working for me today. And then some things that haven't been working, I think probably just anything that I would do in person. I guess I've shifted to this virtual manner. I'm not sure if there's too much that I'd say that hasn't been working. I think obviously adjusting to a virtual environment at first took a little bit of time, but yeah, so far just the things that I mentioned before.
Okay, perfect. And then Billy, is there anything you wanted to add to that question before we jump to the next one?
Well, the only thing I would add is I think, yes, we've all been going through some adjustments, I think, but today is kind of a time where I think, and I keep going back to this, beginner's mindset, but, I think it's important for everyone to promote that in the workplace. But I think this is a time where people should feel comfortable and secure in being their authentic them at work. And so, I would challenge everybody, related to that, because I also believe that confident employees are perceived best. And so, I think, again, it goes back to the beginner's mindset, because some of this is how am I approaching conversations, relationships in the workforce. And I think, if we start from that space, we can influence others to do the same. So
Perfect.
My 2 cents on that topic.
Perfect. And then no matter what role somebody is in, can you just share maybe 1 or 2 things that someone can do and coming back to that standpoint, no matter what role they're in, because I think obviously sometimes people think, hey, this has to come from leadership, or this has to come from, you know, a CEO or a COO. But what can individuals do to enhance, you know, a healthy corporate culture, and move this thing forward?
Me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
all you. Yeah. Go. And then we'll have Maya
Okay.
jump in after and share her
Sorry.
1 or 2 things.
Well, I think there are a number of things, and I think Maya spoke to a little bit of this. You know, a lot of workplaces are, you know, I think we're 100% remote now, and in some cases there may be some roles that aren't. But I think a lot of organizations are looking at what might morph into kind of a hybrid workplace. So I think from a leadership and team member perspective, it is continuing to foster a good culture by trying to stay connected. And so if my leader's not doing this, how can I do this?
Right.
You know, to Maya's point, you can kind of try to schedule check-ins, things like that. You can also collaborate, you know, show that you are a collaborator and you're part of creating a solution to a little bit of the disconnect issue by
Right.
doing that. I think from a leadership standpoint, you know, one of the things I think has really worked is calling to check in on just how you're doing, right? Because I found a lot of times when I'm calling, it's okay. What does she want? She wants me to talk about my numbers, or
Right.
if, you know, and I realized this is an opportunity for me when someone said to me, "Hey, is everything okay?" I'm like, "That's totally fine. Just want to see if you're okay."
Right.
So, I mean, I think that's really helpful, and it's fine to articulate that from a, you know, team perspective to the management. Like, I like to just be engaged in a way. You know,
Right.
and offer up things. There's something that we have in my geography. I like to call it the waggy. What a great idea. And so feeling free to add to the waggy. And I think that creates more value with people, but it also helps people to engage and connect in a different way, since you can't just walk into someone's office right now.
That's so true. So true. And then Maya, how about you? 1 or 2 things that people can do individually, no matter what role they're in, to contribute to that positive corporate culture?
Yeah, so I think it's really beneficial to ask others, both below and above, what kind of change they'd like to see either within the organization or within a project, wherever. And then really working to try to implement that change or drive towards that direction. I think that's something that's very impactful.
Perfect. And then Maya, I want to stay with you on this next question. So how did Protiviti's DEI efforts factor your decision to join the organization?
So Protiviti's DEI efforts were a big reason why I joined. I heard about the different employee network groups that you could be a part of. Like mentioned earlier on, I'm a lead for the New York office multicultural employee network group, but there's also some other ones. There's one just focused on women growth in the workplace, and a bunch of other smaller organizations. So I liked that there was opportunity to be a part of this group as
Right.
well as be a part of the overall company, and kind of have a little bit of extra involvement outside of your normal day-to-day job responsibilities. So that's something that really drove my interest in Protiviti.
Great. And then I wanted to just say this because I think that there are obviously individuals on this call that are in leadership roles or have some type of capacity to attract talent into their organizations. And this is just from, you know, Maya's response right there, just a reminder that people are listening, people are watching. You know, organizations are spending a tremendous amount of money today on their technology and how they are not just, I know we've talked about how we individually brand ourselves, but organizations are spending an obscene amount of money on how they digitally brand themselves moving forward, especially in these areas of diversity and inclusion. And it really could mean the difference between someone deciding to join someone's organization and someone not deciding to join their organization, maybe going to a competitor and working for them. So that is extremely important. So thank you for answering that. And then Billy, question for you. So as a job seeker, what are questions that you can ask maybe during the interview process to discover maybe what an organization's doing if they don't have it posted on a website or on their LinkedIn or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's totally fine to do this. I actually think it's expected, these
Hmm.
days. A few that, come to mind, I just kind of would be point blank about it. Can you share any information regarding the organization's diversity, inclusion, and equity programs,
Hmm.
actions, or efforts? Uh, where is diversity, inclusion, and equity as a priority item for the organization? Are
Right.
there any actions you can share? Any actionable information showcasing the organization's commitment or positions related to this area? Is the organization um, are there programs, actions, and activities related to social justice, racial equity, and anti-racism? Can you provide examples of your work in this space? And I mean, I think most organizations uh, are going to anticipate that and should be able to, showcase examples of how they prioritize this, where they are, and what they're planning to do.
Absolutely. And so just keeping an eye on time, I know we have a couple of minutes left. So I just wanted to end this last question before we do our wrap up. And this is going to go for both of you. But Billy, since you just answered, we'll just stick with you on this one. So why is diversity in the workplace, like, why does it matter? And
Mhm.
how do we increase that moving forward?
So I'm going to be quick so that I don't take all of Maya's time.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I mentioned earlier, and I really thought I'll end with this also, the quote that we got from our leadership: without diversity, we limit our ability to benefit from different ideas, viewpoints, skills, and talents. Second,
Right.
reflects who we are and the communities we serve.
Right.
Third, it's the right thing to do.
Hmm.
And fourth, McKinsey has this 3 series of reports relate why diversity matters, delivering through the diversity, and diversity wins. But in essence, it just highlights that there's increased productivity levels, profitability, retention, and it helps your corporation to grow by making
Right.
sure you have a serious commitment and focus on this. And so
Absolutely.
that's why it's important.
Yes, absolutely. And then Maya, for you to close us out. So why is diversity in the workplace, why does it matter, and why is it so important for us to get this thing moving forward the right way?
Yeah, it really just allows a welcoming environment where all employees feel like they belong. Like Billy mentioned, it helps drive growth and success among teams, and also ultimately just helps drive innovation.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you both so much for walking through those questions. Just a quick wrap up. I'm just going to share before we go into Q&A, just a quick overview of what we discussed. Obviously, we discussed, the components of a beginner's mindset and some insights from both Billy and Maya about what that was. Talked about some new skills, but then also talked about what the workplace of the future is moving forward. So we're going to transition into live Q&A. So excuse me as my eyes move this way to start asking questions. But the first question that came in and whoever wanted to answer this, either Billy or Maya, feel free to go ahead. But it says, my career has been stalled due to the pandemic, but now I want more management responsibility, a promotion, etc. How do you recommend I move up in the career world? What career advancement tips or advice do you have?
I'm happy to jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I'm having a lot of conversations about this. I think it's been a challenging year for a number of people. Some people lost jobs. Some people kind of stayed in their jobs. Workforces were reduced based on the impact of the pandemic, and so some career discussions may have stalled. I think a couple of things I would ask for, just me from a leader perspective, right? I think it's important for us from a leadership perspective to be engaged and be career mapping with our teams. But I
Right.
also think all of us have to be just a little patient because there's a lot of fluidity in the market, and
Mhm.
whereas we're seeing some rebounds and surges in some places, there's still some softness in others.
Sure.
But I challenge leaders in organizations though to make sure that their teams feel like they have a good career path and opportunity to grow. From someone looking for leadership today, maybe was on track but things have stalled. A couple of things I would recommend. So one, deciding if you want leadership internally or elsewhere.
Good
If
point.
it's internally and it's a job you know about, make sure you understand the competencies of that role. So you make sure when you're talking about why you think you could be a fit for you, you're kind of selling yourself on those competencies. A lot of times I've had conversations with people who want to move in leadership, but when I give them like these 5 competencies for the role, they're like, oh, actually, I don't want to do that. So seriously, so it's like,
That's
oh,
true.
okay. And even if you don't have them, it doesn't mean you're not fit for the job, but it's kind of like, so what can we do to position me so that I can actually get better? Because some of it may be just financial analysis. Maybe you never had a chance to be in that space, but what can we do now to get me in a place that I'm able to develop that expertise or skills, because I'm certainly going to go into it with a beginner's mindset. And then, the other piece is trying to ask for, your leader to help you establish some goals to get you to where you want to be. The other things I would recommend, if it's externally, it's kind of some of the same things, but making sure you're getting those skill sets required for the role, and ensuring that you're in a place to really advocate and sell yourself on your ability to be a fit for that. So I think it just has to be proactive, and you got to really kind of speak to what you're looking for and make sure you're in a good position to do that. But ask for goals, ask for time, ask for how you can best prepare yourself to be considered for that role that you were looking for before the pandemic.
Great points. Great points. Maya, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit. I think it's important to also get involved outside of your day-to-day responsibilities. There may be an additional task or an additional role you could take on, and then really having conversations about expectations. I think that's crucial, especially if you're looking to eventually advance, just understanding what are the expectations for your current role, what are the expectations for the next role, and how are you demonstrating those expectations. And then just taking ownership and responsibility for whatever is assigned to you and continuing to network.
Great points. And then I will just add on this, because I've actually walked this life. I mean, before wanting to get into management, for those of you that do not have a mentor is a very, very important thing if you do not have one. I just, bribed my mentor with originally a cup of coffee, $3. I think it's a little bit more money now since I'm a little bit older, but definitely find someone that is in a potential role that you want to get in or has a similar skill set, but also someone that you trust to be honest. And I think that's the biggest thing, like, will honestly give you direct and honest feedback about not only what they think you're good at, but some of the areas and opportunities that you have to move into those other roles. But it also,
Jake,
yeah. No. And I was just going to say, because it also opens you up, not just to that individual, but their network, because you never know who they may know that could potentially get you into, whether it is maybe the role that you're looking for internally from an organization or an external organization. So Bobby, Billy, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, I think that's like a critical piece. And I would also just add, you don't necessarily just have to have one mentor. I know everyone knows that, but
yes,
you can have people who know they're your mentor and kind of unwitting mentors. They don't really know that they're your mentor. Like literally, I still have one. That you have a relationship, but they don't understand that you're modeling them. And so I would just definitely recommend, if there's someone you've seen their career progress, maybe you have a relationship and they haven't committed to a traditional mentorship, but you're modeling them. Then there are other people though that can really, really help you along the way and create a more of an audience for you in terms of a network as well. I think that's critical.
Perfect. All right, so I'm going to jump over to the next question that came in. So the next audience question comes from David, and he wants to know, how can we maximize our employee resource groups to develop new skills if we may be limited by senior support or our managers? So who wants to try and tackle that one?
Yeah, I could start on this one and then Billy
Okay.
can jump in after. But I think when you're part of these employee resource groups or leading these groups, it's crucial to just take it upon yourself to encourage others to get involved. So even if you might not be having as much support as you'd like, there's still ways to get maybe people more at your level involved. You can try to develop new skills through various free platforms and really just further cultivate that support among your peers. And then also looking into partnering with other organizations, either other employee resource groups or other organizations that you know of, where it might just be beneficial to coincide on some initiatives.
Perfect. Billy, anything you wanted to add to that?
Just quickly, I would just say, continue to be the squeaky wheel also. I know we have an unnamed group, but I will tell you, I have invites on my calendar all the time. They are a squeaky wheel and it's working. The second thing I would say is just make sure your organization and communication is organized and presented in a way that showcases what your priorities are and what you're asking for.
Right.
And then hold the leaders who say they support accountable by just asking for what you need. So those are my three.
Great points. Thank you both. All right, so the next question that we have comes from Serena. Hopefully I pronounced that right, Serena. Any tips for anyone who spent years in retail, served in AmeriCorps for a year as staff in higher education and is now starting over from interview to interview?
I can take that, but it's okay. So anyone who's been in retail, one, served in AmeriCorps for years, and as staff in higher education. So now looking to transition jobs or enter the workforce is what I'm assuming is the question.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yep. So again, so this kind of goes back to the comments earlier. I would try to focus on what I'm interested in. And so maybe the response is, I'm not sure. I know what I'm interested in. I'm not sure what I'm going to be a fit for. Take out your transferable skills. So when you just mentioned retail, I'm thinking you probably had some business development and sales experience and some client facing and customer service experience. That's pretty important now.
It is.
It's something we look for internal hiring. Honestly, my teams are a team of legal recruiters, but business development professionals. And then in some of your other, the educational space, whether it's leadership, etc., I would pull those skills and I create kind of an elevator pitch for myself that summarizes your experience. That can kind of propel how you move forward with your career. I definitely make sure I'm branding myself in the way I want to be perceived as well. The other thing I would mention is seek out a recruiter, connect with a recruiter for career guidance that can help you as well to kind of align what you think you want to do, what the market holds, and how it could be a better match or best match for you.
Absolutely. Maya, anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, basically just reiterating a lot of the points that Billy said, but with every role, you really want to get an understanding of the job requirements, do research on the company that you're interviewing for, and be honest with yourself, recognize your strengths, and also recognize your areas for improvement. And so I think, like Billy mentioned, it is that background of being in retail and other organizations is definitely really important, and just being able to frame that where it's applicable for whatever position you are then looking for.
Absolutely. And if I can just piggyback on that, I'm just going to say the exact same thing you both said, but in a different way too, because I think a lot of the times when individuals or have worked in, whether it's retail or, the food industry or something like that, there's this sense to minimalize your skill set. And I think that that's not something that is very advantageous. And pulling out and extrapolating those core competencies that you're successful in your job and just taking them to another place is huge. So the biggest thing I would just say, just don't minimalize any experience that you have, because there's great skill sets and great characteristics that you've probably done that are transferable to the jobs that you're looking to get into. All right, so next question we have is, when interviewing, is it okay to ask the D&I question? If so, will it be weird if they can't answer or any questions on the topic? Answer a question or any questions on that specific topic.
That's a great one.
That's a great question. So who wants to tackle that one?
I'm happy to jump in.
All right,
but by the way, I get the D&I question all the time. I interview all the time.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. I think it should be expected considering the world around us today. But it is awkward if you don't get an answer. But you just, so I would just say a couple of things. A lot of organizations, recently, a lot of CEOs made a CEO action plan. So a lot of what they're doing is in development, and they're cascading this down through organizations. The good news is this top of mind for a number of organizations. And so, there's probably some patience out there also. If the person you're interviewing with can't give you an answer on the spot, maybe it's we'll I'd certainly love to follow up with you if there's, if you need to follow up and get more information, but I'd be interested in any information you want to provide. Because at the end of the day, also, I think most hiring managers know, yes, I'm interviewing you, but I hope you're interviewing me also.
Right.
Because we want this to be a career choice for you and we want to retain you. And there's a lot of interest in creating a diverse and inclusive work environment. And so with that in mind, I would certainly, if I can speak to everything my organization is doing, I think most managers would be happy to say, here's a few things I know about, but we are, as I would quote, this is a priority. Let me get more detail for you. I'd like to schedule a follow-up call to share that with you as well.
Absolutely. Perfect. And then Maya, anything you wanted to add to that question?
I think Billy covered most of it. I definitely would encourage people to ask about that. And then worst case, if the interviewer does not know, they'll likely follow up with you, or you could find out more information on that company's website. But I think that's also important.
Perfect. All right, so next question we have came in. It says, I've been at my agency for close to 2 years and have not been offered a full-time position. My supervisor constantly praises my work ethic, yet I am not officially hired within the organization and feel that the work I am doing exceeds my pay. Should I leave or wait it out? So who wants to jump on that one first?
Well, I hope the agency is not Robert Half. Let me just start with that.
Please.
If it is, call any one of us after this call.
Yeah, absolutely.
So assuming it's not, I think you have to have a career discussion with them. Like we mentioned, the market is pretty robust for skilled talent. If you've been on an engagement or multiple engagements for 2 years, I think I would ask for a review from my agency to see, if you've suggested that you don't just want to be on project-based engagements, if you suggest that you're looking for a full-time permanent, then maybe there's a communication disconnect there, then why hasn't that happened and what can happen to get you there? And I make it clear I'm looking for that. And so I'm going to start proposing that on my own. I really like the organization. I like working with you, but what can you do to help me? But I'd ask for a review immediately.
Okay, perfect. And then Maya, anything you wanted to add? And then we have one more question after this before we wrap up.
No, I agree with Billy. Just having open communication, making sure there's no miscommunications. And once you get that review, then acting on whatever feedback you get, if there is feedback for areas of opportunity.
Absolutely. All right, so this is going to be the last audience question. What would be your one top beginner's mindset tip? How about Maya, since you can keep going on that one. So what would be your one top beginner's mindset tip?
Yeah, my top beginner's mindset tip would be just be open to anything. I think there's a lot of ways to interpret that. Be open to maybe a different role, or you might be thrown onto a different project where you might not know as much, but just keep having that open mindset. And then also be open to different ways to approach something, whether it's a more technical approach or thinking outside of the box. I just think being open in general is really crucial to maintaining that beginner's mindset.
Perfect. And then Billy, how about you?
I would say learn as much as you can and be open to that, because it will only help. Like, take advantage of all training opportunities, and a lot of them are free. I'd also suggest just kind of have the I will and I can versus why I can't type of approach, because that's really, really well received for employers. And so just learn as much as you can with an open mind.
Absolutely. And I think that would be mine as well, would just be a lifelong learner, a consistent learner. And if you ever feel stuck, reach out for help. Like, I think that's one of the other things too, is like, it's not here for us to figure out on our own. We have a network around us, whether that's family, friends, coworkers, to just ask them to help push you along and just always be a lifelong learner. So with that being said, thank you both so much. I'm going to pass it back over to Kenneth to close us out. So Kenneth, I'm going to hand it back over to you, sir.
I appreciate it. You guys did an amazing job today. Kudos to the team over there at Robert Half Protiviti. Excellent. So we have some resources. You know, we have them on screen here, but this is the Man for Skilled Talent, the Robert Half Salary Guide. Also, how inclusion and diversity can make your business better. 3 different learning styles and how to use them in your career. Please connect with Jason, Billy, Maya, and Molly, and everybody here at the UL Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series. It's been great. So next week, not next week, May 5th, coming up, building your professional tribe. So according to the Center for Talent Innovation, 85% of women and 81% of multicultural professionals need navigational support to advance their careers. Exactly what Jason was just speaking about, right? So during this webinar, attendees will explore the difference between sponsorship, mentorship, advocates, and coaching, and why they are important for a successful career growth. You can register at bit.ly/DCSS_tribe. You'll be receiving that information in an email as well. All right, so listen, I want to speak, I'd be remiss if not negligent to not touch on the events of yesterday. Needed, necessary, and truthful were the words offered from NUL President and CEO Mark Morial regarding the George Floyd verdict. If you're looking for information or action steps, please visit NUL.org and join us as we imagine a world with no equality gaps. I want to thank you for joining us today. This concludes today's formal program. We would like to invite you all to stay on for an additional 15 minutes. Recruiters from Robert Half and Protiviti will be available to answer your hiring and job search questions. I'm Kenneth L. Johnson on behalf of the National Urban League, Wanda Jackson, Kristen Bray. Thank you for joining us today. Have a great one.